he said, okay, let's go to Israel for 2 years in between my 2 oldest daughters' bat mitzvahs. We were going to just come, learn Hebrew, hang out for 2 years and go back. And after about 6 months, he said, and some of the kids said, no, 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 we want to stay. So it was a difficult decision because we have no family here at all. I didn't speak Hebrew. I was totally in control. And then we got here. I could not help a first grader with their math homework. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't barely figure out what I was buying in the grocery store. So I would say that Israel was more my husband's agenda, and it wasn't mine, and it never occurred to me that we would live here. It just happened. I didn't stay because I fell head over heels in love with Israel. I mean, I saw that it would be a marvelous place to raise a country. I also did that dance that all these mothers do, which is, oh, by the time my boys are big enough, they won't have to go in the army. There'll be peace, haha. You know, that's a huge piece of the whole thing, is that, like, are you willing to commit? I'm on my 4th kid in the army. This morning, my husband drove my 3rd daughter and my son in uniform to the bus. You know, I always say, like, in America, I would read the papers, and for me, it was somebody else, somewhere else. It had nothing to do with me. And here I would read the paper, and I took everything personally. The paper offended me. Like, every article, how could there be Jewish thieves, and how could there be a Jewish mafia, and how could we do this, and how could Israel do that? Like, I took everything personally, because it was my country and my people. Only now can I really look back and say, this was the smartest thing we ever did.
Okay. Yes. Well, how was India?
Oh my God.
We'll just continue on with normal life.
I want you to teach us yoga.
Yeah, I will. Wow, you look amazing.
Basically, I got off the plane and I could say shalom and mazal tov and ma nishma, I think. And I didn't know the alphabet. You know, I was never bat mitzvah. I don't know exactly what I did in Hebrew school, but I didn't learn Hebrew. So I went to Ulpan. Kita Aleph, you know, we just started from scratch. I did learn to speak Hebrew, basic present tense Hebrew, but there was no time left at the end of the day for making art. By the time I finished my Hebrew homework and took care of the kids, that was it. There was no more hours left in the day, and I was miserable. I was just miserable. So I made an executive decision after that first year that I was never going to be fluent in Hebrew, that I would be an embarrassment to my children one day, but that I was going to make art and be happy.
What is that, like a cut, like an attribute line, like who shot the photograph?
No. An academical, well, not like an article kind of. Talking about your art.
My kids are all fluent, my husband's fluent, so if I need help filling out a form or something, they help me. I mean, it's always going to be a bit of a handicap. But it's funny because, like, what an Israeli artist longs for is to have shows in America and to have relationships with American museums and American curators. And for me, that was the easy piece. I wanted to have my work shown here. I think that art is such a wonderfully human way to pull people in and to make them aware and move them, you know, in a way that just standing in front of them and reading them statistics doesn't do. And that's what I love, is like seducing the viewer and then saying, oh, by the way, this piece is about this huge problem. Did you know this existed? Do you know that, you know, this percentage of people deal with this, or you know, there's this many chained women in the world, or that abuse occurs this many times? Someone gave me a handbook that was published in America about domestic violence within the Jewish community, which we all pretend doesn't happen either. And I started reading these stories, and they were shocking. And then I thought, you know, what if I stamp these stories on silk so that something that's very soft and beautiful, because, like, who beats a woman? Like, who hurts a woman? And that's what I did. In fact, I turned them into belts, and their stories are all hand stamped on each one. There's a few red ones that are symbolic of the women who were killed and never lived to tell their story.
יש בי אהבה והיא תתעורר ותיגע. יש בי אהבה והיא תנצח. יש בי אהבה והיא תתעורר ותיגע. יש בי אהבה והיא תנצח. בין השפיות לשינה.
There is zero separation between my life and my art, and it's almost like therapy for me, you know, to do art that deals with the things I'm feeling and worrying about. So I've had 3 daughters go through the IDF and 2 son-in-laws, but now is the first time I've had a son go into the Army, and it's loaded. It's just so packed, the situation, with emotion and issues. And so one of the art projects that I'm doing, it's a long-term project, is that for every day that I have a son in the Army, I'm sewing the prayer for the IDF, 1 page at a time for every day. So I suspect that, you know, probably by the time my oldest son gets out, my youngest son will go in. So we're probably talking about 7 years, maybe, of sewing pages of books. So my suspicion is that this book will sort of curl around the room and pile up on itself. But every day I'm sewing a page. The fact that I'm Orthodox, and I've chosen to be Orthodox, so when I see something in Orthodoxy, like let's say agunot, you know, or this current obsession with modesty in women, or these extremes that are appearing now, I take it personally. I'm so proud of my choice to be Orthodox, and I can give you 1,000 rational reasons why I chose and why it works and why I think it's a brilliant system. But when I see what I perceive to be chinks in that, you know, foundation of Orthodoxy, I respond to it, and it comes out in my art. You know, part of it is that tikkun olam thing, that you want to fix everything. You know, so you choose the things that are broken that you try to fix.